There was no dramatic family meeting, no shouting match, just a cold two-sentence text from my father. Effective immediately, you are on your own. We have done our part. They expected that message to break me. They thought I'd come crawling back within a month, begging for help. They definitely didn't expect me to smile, but I did. Not out of spite, but because in that moment of total abandonment, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. This is the story of how my family trying to ruin me actually set me free. My name is Leslie. I'm 29 years old. To really get why they cut me off, you have to understand my family. On the surface, we looked perfect. My dad was a senior manager at a decent firm, and my mom stayed home to dedicate her life to her children, or more accurately, to one of her children, my younger brother, Alex. Alex was the golden child. He could do no wrong. His grades were mediocre, but he was just finding himself. His string of failed part time jobs was exploring his options. When he crashed the brand new car they bought him for his 18th birthday, it was a valuable life lesson. The lesson, apparently, was that dad would just buy him another one. He was charming, he was charismatic, and he knew exactly how to play the part of the promising son, even if the promise was always empty. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, the quiet one. I got good grades, worked a part time job since I was 16, and saved up for my own things. I was studying computer science at a local university, a field I loved, but one my parents found dreadfully boring. They paid my tuition and rent for a small apartment off campus, but it always felt like a transaction. My existence was a line item on their budget. My achievements got a simple nod, while Alex's see a cause for celebration. The double standard was breathtaking. If I asked for help with a textbook, I got a lecture on budgeting. If Alex asked for a few $100s for a weekend trip, my dad would transfer the money before he even finished his sentence. I was supposed to be grateful for the bare minimum, while he was entitled to everything. It quietly chipped away at my sense of worth for years. The message was clear: my value was conditional, tied to my practicality. His was inherent. The breaking point came in my junior year. I got an offer for a prestigious summer internship. It was unpaid, but the experience was a game changer. It almost guaranteed a great job after graduation. The only catch? It was in another city. I'd need help with rent for 3 months. I spent weeks putting together a detailed proposal, outlining the costs, the career benefits, even a repayment plan. I presented it to them at dinner. My father scanned the papers, his face a blank wall. My mother just looked nervous. He pushed the papers back to me. "We don't think this is a wise use of resources," he said flatly. "You have a perfectly good summer job here. An unpaid position is a frivolity." I tried to explain the long term value, but he cut me off. "Your brother is thinking of taking a trip to Europe this summer to broaden his horizons. We need to support his personal growth." I was stunned. My career opportunity was a frivolity, but Alex's backpacking trip was personal growth? The illusion of fairness just shattered. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I just said, "Okay." And a quiet, cold anger settled deep in my gut. I turned down the internship, went back to my diner job, and spent the summer listening to Alex's stories about his grand European adventure, all on our parents' dime. That was the beginning of the end. I started checking out emotionally long before they sent that text. A few months later, I made the fatal mistake. My dad was complaining about paying for a new transmission for Alex's second car. I quietly mentioned that if Alex got a part time job, he could help pay for his own expenses. The silence was deafening. I hadn't just suggested my brother get a job, I had questioned the entire family system. The unspoken rule was that Alex was to be supported and I was to be self sufficient. 2 days later, the text arrived. Effective immediately, you are on your own. We have done our part. No phone call, no discussion. They probably pictured me panicking. And for a second, I did. The first 24 hours were a blur of pure anxiety. The feeling of being thrown away by your own family is a unique kind of pain. It's a rejection so deep it makes you question your own existence. I just sat in my small apartment, the silence buzzing around me, feeling like the world was behind a thick pane of glass. Then survival mode kicked in. I had $437 in my bank account. Rent was due in 2 weeks. A tuition payment was a month away. My diner job barely covered groceries and gas. I was, to put it lightly, screwed. Those next few months were the hardest of my life. I had to drop down to a part time course load because I couldn't afford a full schedule and simply didn't have the time. My life became a frantic, exhausting loop. I kept my diner job, but I also started working as a janitor at a gym late at night. My days started at 6 a.m. for classes and ended at 2 a.m. scrubbing floors. Sleep felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. My diet was basically instant noodles, rice, and whatever stale bread I could talk my manager at the diner into giving me. I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. But as physically exhausting as it was, the shame was worse. I didn't want to tell my friends what happened, so I dodged their calls and made excuses for why I couldn't hang out. I felt like a complete failure, convinced that everyone could see it. It's easy to believe you're worthless when your own family throws you out. I hit rock bottom one cold November night. I was walking home from my janitor shift because my tire was flat and I didn't have the money the to fix it. My shoes had a hole in the sole and my sock was soaked with icy slush. As I was limping down the street, my phone buzzed. It was a picture from my mom, her, my dad, and Alex all beaming in front of a brand new SUV. A Christmas gift for Alex. The caption read, "A reliable car for our wonderful son to start his new job search." I just stood there on that dark, wet street and broke. I started crying, not quiet tears, but ugly, ragged sobs. The sheer injustice of it all felt like a physical weight. I was walking myself sick just to make rent, and they were celebrating my brother's coddled life with a $30,000 gift. But as I stood there shivering, another feeling started to bubble up through the tears: rage. A cold, clear, motivating rage. They wanted me to fail. They were flaunting their support for Alex, probably hoping it would push me to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. And that's when I smiled, a real smile right there on that miserable street, because I realized this wasn't just a struggle for survival anymore. This was a fight, and I was going to win. That night, I went home, dried my eyes, and started thinking not just about surviving, but about winning. Rage was a great motivator, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. I needed a plan. Working two dead end jobs just to scrape by wasn't a future. First, I got brutally honest about my finances. I laid out every dollar earned and every dollar spent. It was a grim picture, but it was clear. I saw exactly where every penny was going and cut out everything that wasn't essential. Next, I started an emergency fund. It felt ridiculous trying to save money when I could barely eat, but I knew one unexpected expense could send me right back to them. I set up an automatic transfer of just $10 a week. Watching that tiny fund grow dollar by dollar was a huge psychological boost. It was a safety net, one that I was weaving myself. Then I tackled my income. My passion was still computer, was science. I couldn't afford full-time tuition, but I realized I could afford online certification courses. I started dedicating my early mornings to learning new programming languages. It was grueling, but every module I finished felt like laying a new brick in the foundation of my life. I also started freelancing on sites like Upwork and Fiverr. My first gig was a simple website for a local bakery. It paid $200. It took me a week of sleepless nights, but holding that payment felt better than any paycheck I'd ever received. It was money earned with my skills, not just my time. During all this, I started building a new family. I finally opened up to a couple of close friends. They weren't pitiful, they were furious on my behalf and offered unwavering support. They became my cheerleaders, my confidants, my real family. Their support was the antidote to the poison of my family's rejection. A year went by like that. A year of relentless grinding and building. I finished several certifications. My freelance work picked up. I was able to quit the janitor job, then reduce my hours at the diner. I re enrolled in my university program with night classes. I was still broke, but it was the broke of investment, not desperation. My emergency fund had grown to over $1,000. The biggest shift, though, was inside me. I started to see the cutoff differently. It wasn't a story of rejection, it was the story of my liberation. They didn't discard me, they released me. They gave me the brutal, painful, and priceless chance to see how strong I really was. By the time I graduated 2 years after that text message, I was a different person. I had a degree, a strong portfolio, and a job offer from a tech company. I was financially stable, emotionally resilient, and completely independent. I didn't speak to my family for 3 years. I didn't reach out, and neither did they. I heard through the grapevine that Alex was still bouncing between opportunities, living at home, and driving cars they bought for him. I felt nothing about it. His life was his, mine was mine. I was thriving. I loved my job as a software developer. I was debt free, had a healthy savings account, and was even starting to invest. I had my own apartment in the city, a life I had built myself, and friends who were my real family. I was genuinely happy. Then one evening, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach clench. Dad. I let it ring for a moment before answering. His voice was strained, all of its usual authority gone. He tried making small talk, pretending to be interested in a life he'd ignored for 3 years. I kept my answer short. I knew this wasn't a social call. Finally, he got to it. Listen, he said, his voice dropping. We're in a bit of a tough spot. Your brother, he made a bad investment. I stayed silent. He explained that Alex, trying to play the stock market, had invested a huge chunk of money. Of course, it wasn't his money. He'd taken out a high interest loan, co signed by my parents, with their house as collateral. The venture went bust, and now loan sharks were demanding $50,000. We just don't have that kind of cash, my father said, his voice dripping with desperation. I could hear my mother crying in the background. Then came the words I knew were coming. We were wondering, he said, the false humility cracking in his voice, if you could help us, help your brother, for family. For family. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I wasn't family when I needed help for an internship that would have built my career. I wasn't family when I was working myself to the bone just to survive. But now that their precious golden child had finally driven them into a wall, suddenly I was family again. I thought about the nights I went hungry. I thought about the hole in my shoe, the slush on my sock. I thought about the text message that was meant to break me. I took a deep breath, and that old rage returned. But this time, it was calm and sharp as glass. No, I said. The silence on the other end was heavy. What what do you mean? No? He stammered like he'd never heard the word before. I mean no, I repeated, my voice perfectly even. I will not be giving you or Alex any money. Our financial relationship was severed 3 years ago. You made that very clear. You told me I was on my own. This is different, he sputtered. This is your brother. This is our home. My brother is a grown man who needs to face his own consequences, I replied, and your home is your responsibility. You chose to back his bad decisions for years while you left me to fend for myself. You made your investment. This is the return. He started yelling then, calling me ungrateful, selfish, cold. He said I'd forgotten where I came from. Oh, I haven't forgotten, I said, and for the first time, I felt a real sense of closure. I remember exactly where I came from and exactly how I got here. I did it without you. I won't be the solution to a problem that you created. I told them not to call me for money again, and then I did something I never had the power to do before. I hung up the phone. My family had to take out a second mortgage to pay off Alex's debt. Their retirement plans were destroyed. Alex finally had to get a real low wage job. The world they built, the one where he was propped up and I was disposable, had crumbled under its own weight. And me. I smiled. Not because they were suffering, but because I was free. That journey was excruciating, but it taught me that self reliance is the ultimate power. My worth isn't tied to anyone's approval. That text message wasn't an ending, it was the beginning. It was the painful catalyst that forced me to become who I am today, strong, independent, and happy. Family isn't always about blood, it's about who shows up. It's about who supports you and believes in you. I found my real family in the friends who stood by me. And I found myself in the struggle they thought would destroy me. They cut me off, expecting me to come crawling back. They never expected that in doing so, they were setting me free. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar or just want to hear more stories about finding strength in adversity, please consider subscribing. Your journey is your own, and you are more capable than you know. And